What up, you slaughterhounds? That sounds nasty and dirty, but I was just referring to the horror fans of the universe. Well, welcome back to some hot, fresh popcorn and joining me for episode 5 of A BrassReel Halloween! And we're ending off the week with a Franchise Friday, one of the big 4. Starting it off with Texas Chainsaw. Actually released as Texas Chainsaw 3D. Alright, so look, I know what you're thinking. Why are you reviewing that stupid movie? Well, I happen to think it's not stupid. I love this movie. I thought it was a great addition to the Texas Chainsaw franchise. It's kind of like what David Gordon Green did with the 2018 reboot of Halloween. So it was a sequel, but what that one did was erased every sequel and had only the first movie existing. So it picked up right where the first movie leaves off. This one does the same thing as that, and it actually did it before the Halloween 2018, or attempted to do it. The idea was to start an entire new franchise picking up off of the first film, Tobe Hooper's 1974 classic.
What happened was true.
Which most people say between that one, Black Christmas, Halloween, and Psycho, between those 4 movies, that's what really started the slasher genre. It's directed by John Lewisenhop and written by Adam Marcus. Adam Marcus is the same guy who did Jason Goes to Hell, which a lot of people hate that one, but I love it. That's actually going to be one of the ones I review this month. But the idea is that it picks up right where the first one left off, but the whole movie takes place in present day. Alexandra Daddario, woo, so hot. And she's a great actress. She gets notified that she's the heir to this property in Texas. Her and a bunch of friends go check it out like you do in a slasher flick. But this one has plenty of homage to the first movie, but like the first movie where a lot of people think that's like the goriest movie ever made, the first movie actually has very little blood in it. Like literally, it's just a drop of blood here, some blood on the face here and there. You never actually see any real gore, which makes that movie so freaking effective. Well, this movie definitely gives you the gore, but it gives you the tension and the dread too, but it definitely feeds you the gore. In fact, spoiler alert, at one point they even chop a dude straight in half. They saw him in half. I really like the approach to the storyline in this movie, especially the opening scene where you have Bill Moseley and Gunnar Hansen. Bill Moseley played Chop Top in part 2, and Gunnar Hansen is the original Leatherface. But Bill Moseley is playing Drayton Sawyer, the original dad from the original movie and part 2. It's a nice little homage to that whole thing, and this picks up right where part 1 leaves off, and the whole town is trying to destroy the Sawyer family. And they do a great job of making Bill Moseley, playing Drayton Sawyer, look like Jim Sadow or however you say that name. The father from the first 2 movies. But immediately most people thought this movie looked too polished. Any sequel compared to the first movie is gonna look polished. The way that movie was so gritty and so real feeling, you're never gonna capture that again. That was lightning in a bottle. Every filmmaker knows it and every horror fan knows it. It's just something we've accepted. They do some stuff in the very beginning with Gunnar Hansen and Bill Moseley and that whole family, and you actually see Leatherface, and he's supposed to be the same looking Leatherface from the first film. And they do this whole thing where they like simplify the family and just kill them all off except for Leatherface. So now the rest of the movie is just about him surviving and this group of kids finding him. They're discovering the house. But overall, I think it kind of checks all the boxes for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. I mean, it's brutal. It's got a lot of tension. It's a little darker. Like I said, plenty of homages to the original film and the entire franchise. There's head bashings and decapitations, fingers getting cut off, full bodies being ground up. And one of the cool little homages they do is they do like a reverse gender thing with the meat hook. In the original, they hang a girl on the meat hook, and in this one, they hang a dude and then chop him in half. So it's kind of a Leatherface movie, not to be confused with Leatherface, which was the movie that came right after this one. That's an actual origin story about from birth to when he actually dons the saw. This one is like what happens to Leatherface after the events of the first movie. The main reason I did this movie is, 1, I don't think it gets enough credit in the franchise, and 2, I think it's the spookiest one of them all. It just has a spooky feeling to me. Especially when there's that fair scene at the end, which would never happen, but I love it. I love any sort of public horror stuff, especially when like a killer's like in a public horror setting. Like in Freddy vs. Jason when Jason's at that frat party in the cornfield. Love it. And there's a funny little nod to Saw in this one when they're at the fair, because this franchise at the time was owned by Lionsgate. There's a moment where you see the pig from Saw, and then Leatherface is up against him for a second. It looks like they're about to have a standoff. And in certain weird ways, they kind of try to make you feel sorry for Leatherface. While Leatherface is the bad guy and he's killing people, there's also this group of townies who one of the guys is now a sheriff, but they were alive back in the day, and they're the ones that burned the house down originally. They make you hate him and those guys in this movie. Even though they're not really doing anything wrong, they knew what they were supposed to be doing. They knew that the Sawyer family was bad, but the movie does a good job of making you hate them and sort of root for Leatherface. But this was produced by Tobe Hooper and Kim Hinkle, the guys who created the original movie, and Tobe Hooper's been a producer all the way through. He's never let go of the rights to it. He's been a producer of the remakes, the sequels, all that stuff. He just stopped directing after the second one. But he put his stamp on this one and he thought he did a good job. He really liked it because it was something new. They weren't just trying to rinse and repeat. I hate that. I'm one of the guys who likes this one. I do think it's really good. I also like Next Generation. I only like that one just because it's a crapshoot. It's just so crazy. It's literally like watching a dumpster fire with babies jumping out of it. Matthew McConaughey, you can't not love him in that role. As bad as the movie is, you can't not love him in that. He's fantastic.
I am in the mood for love.
So if you hated this movie, you probably have good reason to. But if you can't remember it, I encourage you to give it another shot. Maybe watch the original one and watch this one right after. They do coincide together pretty well. I think this movie gets a bad rep. And it was originally released in 3D in the theaters, so a lot of people felt that there was a lot of gimmicks in there for it, which there is, but it really is a good movie outside of being 3D. So they called it Texas Chainsaw 3D originally, and now it's just called Texas Chainsaw. So Texas Chainsaw, it's a massacre! Some good bloody popcorn. So I'm taking a break for the weekend, getting prepared for next week, but make sure you join me for Monday's video, Night of the Creeps with Tom Atkins. Thrill me. Well guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you watching A BrassReel Halloween with us. You can find BrassReel Brothers on Facebook. You can find me, Bobby Williams, on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, BrassReel Bobby at BrassReel. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Help us get famous. And remember, if life gives you lemons, make some hot bloody popcorns.